Red lights flashed across the control panel as Dr. Amy Reeves gripped the steering controls with both hands. Her small research ship shook violently as it fell through the atmosphere of the uncharted planet below. Smoke filled the cabin and the emergency alarm screamed warnings she already knew. The engine was dead and she had maybe 2 minutes before impact. Amy had been conducting a routine survey of the outer regions when something hit her ship. No warning, no explanation. Just a sudden explosion in the engine room and then free fall. She fought to keep the nose up to find someplace soft to land. Through the cracked view screen, she saw endless green jungle rushing up to meet her. The ship hit the canopy of massive trees and tore through branches as thick as buildings. Metal screamed and sparks flew. Amy's head slammed against the headrest despite the safety harness. Then everything went still. For a long moment, she just sat there breathing hard, checking her body for injuries. A cut on her forehead bled into her eye, but nothing felt broken. The cabin had held together. Barely. She unstrapped and stumbled to the back of the ship. The engine room was completely destroyed. Melted metal and exposed wiring. No chance of repair. Her emergency beacon was transmitting, but the signal was weak. Help might take days or even weeks to arrive. Amy gathered what she could carry. Medical supplies, food packets, water purifier, and her scientific equipment. The jungle outside was already pressing against the hull. Strange vines with purple flowers grew across the view screen. She popped the emergency hatch and humid air rushed in, carrying smells she had never encountered before. The jungle was like nothing in the database. Trees with silver bark stretched hundreds of feet overhead. Bioluminescent moss glowed on every surface in shades of blue and green. Insects the size of her hand buzzed past on transparent wings. Amy checked her scanner. The air was breathable and no immediate toxins detected. She climbed down from the wreckage and her boots sank into soft moss. That was when she heard it. A high-pitched cry that sounded almost like a bird but deeper, more desperate. Amy turned toward the sound. Her training said to stay near the ship and wait for rescue. Her curiosity said something else. The crying came again, weaker this time. She pushed through the undergrowth, following the sound. 50 yards from her crash site, she found a clearing. The ground was torn up like something had fought here. Broken branches and scattered feathers or scales covered the moss. In the center lay a destroyed nest made of woven vines and mud. Large shells surrounded it, each one cracked open and empty, all except one. Amy approached carefully. The last egg was smaller than the others and cracked down the middle. The crying came from inside. She knelt and gently pulled the shell apart. What emerged made her breath catch. The creature was no bigger than a cat. It had 4 legs, a long tail, and 2 small wings folded against its body. Scales covered it in patterns of dark gray with streaks that glowed faintly orange like dying embers. Its head was reptilian with small horns just beginning to grow. When it opened its eyes, they were golden and far too intelligent for a newborn. Amy had studied xenobiology for 12 years. She had seen thousands of alien species, but this creature looked exactly like something from Earth's ancient myths. It looked like a dragon. The hatchling cried again and tried to stand, but one wing hung at a wrong angle. Blood seeped from cuts along its side. Whatever had destroyed the nest had hurt this one badly. Amy knew she should document this, take samples, follow protocol. Instead, she reached out and gently lifted the creature. It weighed almost nothing. It looked up at her with those golden eyes and made a soft chirping sound. Something large moved in the jungle behind her. Amy turned and saw shapes circling through the undergrowth. They moved on 6 legs and had too many eyes. Predators. The same ones that destroyed the nest. They had come back. Amy ran. She clutched the injured hatchling against her chest and crashed through the jungle back toward her ship. The predators followed. She could hear them getting closer, their breathing harsh and hungry. She reached the ship and scrambled up through the emergency hatch, slamming it shut just as something heavy hit the hull outside. Inside the relative safety of her wrecked ship, Amy laid the hatchling on her folded jacket. It was shivering despite the humid heat. She opened her medical kit and started treating its wounds with steady hands. The creature watched her work and never tried to bite or scratch. It seemed to understand she was helping. As Amy cleaned and bandaged the broken wing, her mind raced with questions. Dragons were not real. They were myths from Earth's ancient past, stories told before humanity reached the stars. Yet here was a creature that matched those myths perfectly. What were the chances? What did it mean? Outside, the predators circled the ship, making sounds like grinding metal. Amy set up a motion detector near the hatch and made a small nest for the hatchling using her spare clothes. The creature curled up in the fabric and its glowing marks pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Night fell over the alien jungle. The bioluminescent plants grew brighter, turning the landscape into something from a dream. Amy sat with her back against the wall, watching the sleeping hatchling. Her emergency beacon blinked weakly in the corner. She was stranded on an unknown world with limited supplies and dangerous predators outside. But she was not alone. The dragon hatchling made small sounds in its sleep, and despite everything, Amy smiled. Tomorrow she would figure out how to survive. Tonight she would keep watch over the impossible creature that trusted her enough to sleep in her presence. She had crashed looking for alien life. Instead, she had found something that should not exist, and somehow she knew her life had just changed forever. Sunlight filtered through the cracked viewscreen and woke Amy from an uncomfortable sleep. Her neck ached from sitting against the wall all night. She stretched and immediately checked on the hatchling. It was awake and watching her with those intelligent golden eyes. The bandage on its wing was still secure, and the creature looked stronger than yesterday. Amy opened a food packet and ate the tasteless protein bar while studying her unexpected companion. The hatchling tilted its head, mimicking her movements. She broke off a piece of the bar and offered it. The creature sniffed carefully, then turned away. Not interested in human food, apparently, they had a problem. Amy had maybe 2 weeks of supplies. The hatchling needed to eat something. She checked her scanner for the local area. The device showed dozens of life signs in the jungle, plants and animals both. Some might be edible. Others might be deadly. The hatchling made a chirping sound and moved toward the hatch. It wanted outside. Amy thought about the predators from last night, but her motion detector showed nothing large nearby. They would have to risk it. She needed water and the hatchling needed food. She opened the hatch slowly. The morning air was cooler and mist hung between the trees. Amy climbed down with the hatchling following awkwardly. Its injured wing made movement difficult, but it managed. Once on the ground, it immediately started moving through the undergrowth with purpose. Amy followed, keeping her scanner active. The creature seemed to know where it was going. After 10 minutes, it stopped at a cluster of plants with broad leaves and purple fruit hanging in bunches. The hatchling reached up and pulled one fruit down, biting into it. Juice ran down its scales. Amy scanned the fruit. No toxins detected, high in sugars and proteins. The hatchling ate 3 more fruits, then looked at Amy expectantly. She picked one and examined it. The skin was tough, but the inside smelled sweet. She took a small bite. It tasted like a mix of berries and something nutty. Not bad. The hatchling chirped happily and continued moving. It led her to a stream with crystal-clear water flowing over smooth stones. Amy filled her containers while the creature drank. She realized something important. This hatchling was not just intelligent. It understood the jungle in ways she never could. It knew what was safe to eat and where to find water. It was helping her survive. Over the next 3 days, they fell into a routine. The hatchling grew rapidly, doubling in size each day. By the 3rd morning, it was as big as a medium dog. Its injured wing healed faster than should be possible. Amy took samples of its blood and studied them in her portable lab. The results made no sense. The creature's cells regenerated at an incredible rate, and its DNA was unlike anything in the galactic database. She started calling the creature Ash because of its gray scales and ember-like markings. Ash seemed to recognize the name within hours. More than that, it responded to her gestures and tone of voice as if understanding language. On the 4th night, the predators returned. 6 of them surrounded the ship, larger than Amy had thought. They looked like a cross between wolves and insects with segmented bodies and snapping mandibles. Amy called them Ravagers, and they were hungry. Ash stood between Amy and the hatch, small wings spread wide. The Ravagers circled closer. One lunged forward, and Ash met it with surprising speed. The hatchling's claws raked across the predator's face, and it yelped, backing away. The other Ravagers charged together. Amy grabbed a piece of broken metal from the ship and swung it at the nearest Ravager. It connected with a satisfying crunch. Ash jumped onto another one's back, biting and clawing. Despite being smaller, the dragon fought with fierce determination. The Ravagers had expected easy prey. They found a fight instead. After 5 minutes of chaos, the Ravagers retreated into the jungle, leaving 2 of their pack dead. Ash was breathing hard and had new scratches across its scales, but was otherwise unhurt. Amy was shaking from adrenaline. They had survived, but just barely. As Ash grew bigger, The young dragon would be more dangerous. But right now it was still vulnerable. Amy dressed Ash's wounds and the dragon pressed against her side, making a deep rumbling sound in its chest. Almost like a cat purring, she stroked its scales and felt the warmth radiating from its body. The bond between them was growing stronger each day. On the morning of the 5th day, Amy made a decision. Her emergency beacon was not getting any response. Either it was too damaged or help was too far away. Sitting by the ship waiting would eventually get them killed. She had seen structures in the distance through the canopy on the first day. Ruins of some kind. If there was ancient technology there, maybe she could use it to boost her signal. She packed everything essential into a backpack. Food, water, medical supplies, and her scientific equipment. Ash watched her prepare and seemed to understand they were leaving. The dragon was now large enough that its head reached Amy's waist. The wings were fully healed and Ash could glide short distances between trees. They left the crash site as the sun climbed higher. The jungle was beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Flowers as big as dinner plates bloomed in rainbow colors. Insects sang songs that sounded almost musical. But danger lurked everywhere. Vines that looked harmless would suddenly coil and try to grab anything that touched them. Small lizards had venom that could drop a person in seconds. The jungle was a test Ash proved invaluable. The dragon could sense danger before Amy's scanner detected it. Several times Ash stopped her from walking into deadly plants or crossing paths with predators. They moved as a team, learning each other's signals and patterns. By evening they had covered several miles. The ruins were closer now, visible through breaks in the canopy. They were massive towers of stone and metal rising above the trees. Whatever civilization built them was far more advanced than anything Amy had seen. They made camp in a sheltered hollow between massive tree roots. Amy started a small fire using her emergency heat pack. Ash curled up next to her, head resting on her lap. The dragon's body heat kept her warm as temperature dropped. Amy looked up at unfamiliar stars through the canopy. She was alone on an alien world with a creature that should not exist. Every scientific principle she knew said this was impossible. Yet here was Ash, breathing steadily against her leg, real and solid and trusting. She thought about Earth, about the myths and legends that every human child learned. Dragons appeared in stories from every culture, every continent. People who had never met each other all told tales of great reptilian creatures with wings and fire. Scientists always said these were just stories, imagination, and nothing more. But what if they were memories? What if somewhere in humanity's ancient past humans had encountered dragons? What if these creatures had visited Earth long ago and left such an impression that humans never forgot? Amy had no answers. But tomorrow they would reach the ruins. Maybe there she would find the truth about Ash and what it meant that they had found each other. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her, one hand resting on Ash's warm scales, protected by a dragon in an alien jungle far from home. They reached the ruins on the 6th day. Amy pushed through a wall of hanging vines and stopped, breath catching in her throat. Before her stood a city that must have been magnificent once. Towers of white stone stretched toward the sky, carved with intricate patterns. Bridges connected buildings hundreds of feet above the ground. Everything was overgrown now, reclaimed by the jungle, but the scale and beauty remained. Ash moved forward confidently, as if recognizing something familiar. The dragon had grown again overnight, and now stood as tall as Amy's shoulder. Its scales had darkened to a deep charcoal color, and the ember-like markings glowed brighter. Amy followed Ash through crumbling archways and down wide streets where trees now grew through ancient pavement. The architecture was strange. Doorways were too wide and tall for humans. The buildings had platforms and perches rather than floors. Everything was designed for creatures that could fly. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. This city was built for dragons. Ash led her to the center of the ruins where a massive building stood relatively intact. A temple or palace, perhaps. The entrance was a tall archway carved with images. Amy stopped to study them. The carvings showed dragons in flight, dragons with other alien species, dragons among the stars. These were not primitive drawings. They were historical records. Inside, the building was dark and cool. Dust floated in beams of light that came through cracks in the ceiling. Their footsteps echoed in the empty space. The walls were covered in more carvings and symbols that Amy did not recognize. Ash walked directly to a raised platform in the center of the main chamber. When the dragon stepped onto the platform, everything changed. Lights flickered to life throughout the building. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing images and text in languages Amy had never seen. The technology was impossibly advanced, still functioning after who knew how many years. Ash sat calmly in the center of the platform as if this was expected. Amy approached carefully, her scanner going wild with readings. The holographic displays shifted and suddenly showed an image of a dragon, but this one was massive, easily the size of a building. It spoke, and the words appeared in the air. After a moment, the system adjusted and the words became English. If you can understand this message, then a hatchling has survived and found a companion worthy of the bond. We are the first children, the eldest species to walk among the stars. For millions of years we traveled the galaxy, spreading life and knowledge. We were not conquerors but gardeners, nurturing young species and helping them grow. The image shifted to show dragons flying between planets, working alongside dozens of alien species, building cities, sharing technology, exploring together. It was beautiful and impossible. We discovered something that changed everything, the ancient dragon continued. There exists a power in the universe, a connection between living beings that transcends simple communication. We called it the true bond. When two souls connect completely, they become more than either could be alone. They share thoughts, strength, and life itself. We believed this bond was our gift to the galaxy. The images showed dragons bonding with various alien species, but many of those attempts ended badly. Conflict, destruction, partners turning against each other. We were wrong to share it carelessly. The bond requires more than intelligence or strength. It requires something rare. Most species, even advanced ones, lack the emotional capacity for true connection. They see the bond as a tool for power rather than partnership. Wars began. Species bonded with dragons became conquerors. We realized our mistake too late. Amy felt cold despite the humid air. Ash pressed against her leg, offering comfort. An ancient defense system was activated by one of the elder councils. They called it the Silence. It was designed to judge species and partnerships, to determine if beings using great power would do so wisely. The Silence began hunting bonded pairs, testing them. Most failed. They chose domination over cooperation. The Silence destroyed them. The hologram showed massive dark ships appearing across the galaxy, hunting dragons and their partners. Entire civilizations fell. We made a choice. Rather than fight, we would sleep. We sealed ourselves in hidden places across 1,000 worlds, leaving only eggs in these archives. We would wait for a species that possessed what the others lacked, a species with the wisdom to use power responsibly. The ancient dragon's eyes seemed to look directly at Amy. We saw the potential in a young species on a small blue world. Humans. You were primitive then, just beginning to use tools. But you had something unique. Your emotional capacity was vast. You could bond not just with your own kind, but with other species, even simple animals. You told stories and created art. You imagined and dreamed. You were capable of great cruelty, but also great compassion. You could choose. Amy's hands trembled. The dragon continued. We influenced your development subtly, visited your world in ancient times and left memories that became your myths, ensured that when you reached the stars you would remember us, that some of you would recognize a dragon when you saw one. The bond with humans is possible because we made it so, wrote it into your very genes across countless generations. If you are hearing this, then a human has found a hatchling and formed a bond. This is the beginning of something new. But know this, the Silence still exists. It will detect the bond activation and come to judge you. You must prove that humanity has learned what others could not. That you understand power is not for taking but for protecting. Pass this test and the sleepers will wake. Fail and dragons will truly become only myth. The hologram faded. The lights dimmed. Amy stood in silence, trying to process what she had learned. Dragons were real. They had visited Earth. They had shaped humanity's evolution. And now she and Ash represented a test that could determine the future of both species. Ash nuzzled her hand gently. The dragon's golden eyes held understanding and trust. Amy knelt and wrapped her arms around Ash's neck. The scales were warm and smooth under her hands. She felt something shift inside her, like a door opening in her mind. Suddenly she could sense Ash's emotions. Not words, but feelings. Comfort, determination, affection, and something deeper. A connection that went beyond simple companionship. This was the bond the ancient dragon had spoken of. It had formed naturally between them over the past 6 days, built on trust and mutual care. Amy had not tried to control Ash or use the dragon for her own gain. She had simply helped a creature in need, and that had made all the difference. A sound echoed through the ruins. Ash's head snapped up, alert. Amy checked her scanner, and her blood ran cold. Ships were entering orbit above the planet. Multiple vessels with advanced technology. Someone had detected her emergency beacon or the activation of the ancient systems. Someone was coming. Amy and Ash ran from the temple out into the jungle. As they moved through the undergrowth, Amy realized something terrifying. The archive had activated when Ash stepped on the platform. That meant the warning systems had also activated. The silence knew a dragon lived again. They had perhaps hours before something ancient and deadly arrived to test them. She looked at Ash running beside her, young and strong but still so vulnerable. How could they possibly pass a test that had destroyed entire civilizations? How could one human and one dragon prove humanity deserved this partnership? Amy did not have answers. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would protect Ash with everything she had. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Dawn broke on the 8th day and Amy woke to find Ash trembling beside her. The dragon's scales were glowing brighter than ever before, pulsing with light like a heartbeat. Ash made distressed sounds and Amy instinctively reached out to touch the dragon's side, wanting to offer comfort. The moment her hand connected with Ash's scales, the world exploded into sensation. Amy gasped as thoughts and feelings that were not her own flooded her mind. She saw memories of hatching alone, the fear when predators destroyed the nest, the relief when gentle hands lifted her to safety. She felt Ash's gratitude and trust and something deeper. Love for the strange two-legged creature who had stayed when she could have left. But the connection went both ways. Ash saw Amy's memories too. A childhood on Earth spent reading books about dragons and adventure. Years of study and loneliness, always feeling like she did not quite fit. The terror of the crash and the choice to save an unknown creature, rather than follow protocol. The growing affection for the impossible dragon who had become her family. The bond locked into place and suddenly, Amy could feel Ash's presence in her mind like a second heartbeat. She knew without words that Ash was healthy, growing stronger every hour. She could sense the dragon's awareness of the jungle around them. The way Ash perceived the world through senses humans did not have. It was overwhelming and beautiful. When the connection finally settled to a manageable level, Amy sat back breathing hard. Ash looked at her with understanding in those golden eyes. They could not speak with words, but they no longer needed to. They knew each other completely now. The sound of engines broke the moment. Amy looked up to see 3 ships descending through the clouds heading for the ruins. They bore the markings of the Galactic Council Authority, the governing body that maintained order across known space. Amy's emergency beacon had finally been answered. But something felt wrong about the timing. She and Ash hid in dense undergrowth as the ships landed near the ancient city. Troops emerged wearing combat armor and carrying heavy weapons. This was not a rescue team. This was a containment force. Amy enhanced her scanner and picked up their communications. Biosignatures confirm presence of extinct species. Dragon classification. Recommend immediate quarantine and transfer to research facility for study. Amy's blood ran cold. They were not here to help. They were here to take Ash. Through the bond, she felt Ash's fear and determination. The dragon would fight rather than be captured. Amy put a calming hand on Ash's neck. They needed information before making any moves. 2 figures emerged from the lead ship. One was human, a military commander by his bearing and uniform. The other was an insectoid alien, tall and thin with multiple eyes and precise movements. They walked toward the ruins while troops spread out in search patterns. Amy made a decision. She stood and walked out of hiding with her hands visible and empty. Ash started to follow, but she sent a feeling through the bond. Stay hidden. The dragon reluctantly obeyed, though every instinct screamed to protect her. The human commander saw her and raised a hand to stop his troops from firing. He approached cautiously. Dr. Reeves, we received your emergency beacon. Are you injured? Amy studied him. Commander Hayes, according to his uniform badge. He looked tired and conflicted. I am fine. What took so long to respond? Hayes glanced at his alien companion before answering. Your crash site was in uncharted space. It took time to organize a rescue. We detected activation of ancient technology in this area. Did you access the ruins? The insectoid alien stepped forward. I am Advisor Nix of the Council Science Division. We have protocols regarding extinct species and restricted technology. You are required to provide full disclosure of any discoveries. Amy kept her expression neutral. I found ruins. They appear to be thousands of years old. The technology inside activated when I entered. Nix's multiple eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. Scans indicate presence of dragon DNA in this area. An impossibility as that species has been extinct for 50,000 years. Yet the readings are conclusive. Through the bond, Amy felt Ash's location. The dragon was circling around, getting into position. She needed to keep these people talking. If dragons existed, why would the council classify them as extinct? Nix made a clicking sound. Dragons were dangerous. They possessed ability to bond with other species, creating partnerships of immense power. Such bonds led to wars and destruction. The council determined that allowing dragon survival posed unacceptable risk. When the last dragons disappeared, it was declared that any remaining specimens would be contained for the safety of all species. Hayes looked uncomfortable. The council's position is that some knowledge is too dangerous to exist. Dr. Reeves, if you have encountered a dragon, you must understand we cannot let it go free. The risk is too great. Amy felt anger rise. Risk to whom? You are talking about genocide based on fear of what might happen. Nix moved closer. We are talking about preventing the return of the silence. That ancient weapon system still exists in dormant state. It is programmed to detect and test dragon bonds. If it fully activates, it will destroy worlds to complete its mission. The only way to keep it dormant is to ensure dragons remain extinct. So you would kill the last of a species to avoid facing a test? Amy asked quietly. Hayes actually looked ashamed. It is not that simple. The Council's projections show that reintroduction of dragons would destabilize galactic civilization. Too many species would seek to bond with them for power. Wars would begin within years. We cannot allow that, Amy understood then. The Council knew everything the archives had shown her. They knew dragons had helped shape younger species. They knew about the bond. They were simply too afraid to let it exist. Fear had become their policy, and they would enforce it with violence if needed. I will not tell you where the dragon is, Amy said clearly. Nix made a gesture, and troops began advancing from all sides. You do not have choice. We will find it with or without your cooperation. Surrender now and you will not be charged with obstruction. Ash burst from the undergrowth with a roar that shook leaves from trees. The dragon had grown even more and now stood nearly as tall as a horse. Wings spread wide, scales glowing with inner fire, Ash looked magnificent and terrifying. Troops raised weapons, but Hayes shouted for them to hold fire. Amy ran to Ash's side and the dragon lowered a wing protectively over her. Through the bond, they were united in purpose. They would not surrender. They would not let fear win. Hayes stepped forward slowly. Dr. Reeves, please. You do not understand what you are protecting. That creature is dangerous. That creature's name is Ash, Amy said, and Ash is the only reason I survived this planet. We have bonded, Commander. I can feel what Ash feels. There is no violence in this dragon, only the desire to live and be free. The danger comes from those who would destroy what they do not understand. Nick spoke coldly. The bond makes you compromised. You cannot be trusted to make rational decisions. We will take both of you into custody. Troops began to close in. Ash tensed, ready to fight. Amy knew they could not win against so many armed soldiers. But she also knew she could not let them take Ash to be dissected in some lab. Through the bond, she felt Ash's resolve. If this was the end, they would face it together. Then Hayes did something unexpected. He raised his weapon and fired past them into the jungle. They went that way. Move out! The troops obeyed immediately, running in the wrong direction. Nick spun toward Hayes in fury. What are you doing? Hayes met the alien's gaze steadily. I am giving them a chance, something my species values that maybe yours does not. He turned to Amy. There is an ancient facility at the polar region of this planet. Dragon hibernation chambers, according to old records. If the silence is coming, that might be the only place strong enough to hide from it. Go now. You will be court-martialed for this, Nix hissed. Hayes smiled without humor. Probably. But I would rather face trial than live knowing I helped extinction happen when there was another choice. He looked at Amy. Prove me right. Prove humans can handle this responsibility. Amy nodded once. She climbed onto Ash's back and the dragon leapt into the air. Flying felt natural with the bond guiding them. They rose above the canopy and turned north toward mountains visible in the distance. Behind them, alarms sounded as Nix realized they were escaping, but they had a head start and Ash flew fast. The wind rushed past and Amy clung to the dragon's neck, feeling the powerful muscles working beneath scales. For the first time, a human and dragon flew together as partners. The bond sang between them, and despite the danger, Amy felt something like joy. Whatever came next, they would face it together. No one would take that from them. The 10th day began with disaster. Amy and Ash had been traveling north for 2 days, following Commander Hayes' directions toward the polar facility. They flew during daylight and hid during darkness as council ships searched the jungle below. The bond grew stronger with each hour, allowing them to move as one being. But they were not careful enough. A pack of ravagers had tracked them to their resting place in a narrow canyon. The 6-legged predators attacked at dawn when Ash was still groggy from sleep. There were dozens of them, far more than the small pack they had faced before. This was a coordinated hunt. Ash fought bravely, breathing small jets of flame that the dragon had learned to produce in recent days. Amy used her plasma cutter as a weapon, slashing at any ravager that got close. But they were overwhelmed. A massive ravager, easily twice the size of the others, came from above and landed on Ash's back. Its mandibles dug deep into the dragon's shoulder. Ash roared in pain and threw the creature off, but the damage was done. Blood poured from the wound, more than Amy had ever seen. Through the bond, she felt Ash's pain as if it were her own, and something more frightening. The dragon's life force was fading rapidly. Amy dragged Ash into a defensive position between rock walls where fewer ravagers could attack at once. She used her medical supplies, but they were meant for human injuries, not dragons. The wounds were too deep. Ash was dying, and there was nothing she could do. Amy felt tears streaming down her face as she held Ash's head in her lap. The dragon's golden eyes looked at her with trust and sadness. Through the bond, Ash sent feelings of gratitude for being saved from the destroyed nest, for the care and companionship, for not being alone at the end, but Amy refused to accept that end. Her emotions, her desperation and love and stubborn human refusal to give up, surged through the bond with intensity she had never felt before. She poured everything she had into that connection, willing Ash to live, demanding it with every fiber of her being. Something inside the bond responded. The connection that had been growing steadily suddenly exploded into something vast. Amy gasped as memories flooded her mind, but not her memories or Ash's. These were ancient, from the collective knowledge of the dragon species itself, stored somehow in the bond and waiting for need great enough to unlock them. She saw the true history of dragons, saw them rise from a single world millions of years ago and spread across the galaxy, saw them discover the bond and use it to help other species evolve and grow, saw the wars that came when power corrupted those partnerships, saw dragons choose sleep over extinction, leaving behind eggs and archives and hope. But most importantly, she saw the truth about dragon biology. They were not simple creatures. When threatened by death, they could accelerate their growth and healing, transforming rapidly from vulnerable youth to powerful adult. It required massive energy, and the trigger was usually survival instinct, but it could also be triggered by the bond itself, by the partner's need. Amy did not hesitate. She opened herself completely to the bond and offered everything she had. Her energy, her life force, whatever Ash needed. Take it all if it meant the dragon would live. The bond accepted. Power flowed through the connection unlike anything Amy had experienced. Ash's eyes blazed with golden light. The wounds began closing at visible speed. The dragon's body grew, bones lengthening and muscles expanding. Scales darkened to deep black with veins of glowing orange running through them like lava. The transformation took minutes but felt like hours. Amy watched in awe and exhaustion as Ash changed from a horse-sized juvenile into something magnificent. The dragon grew until standing at the shoulder height of an elephant, with wings that stretched 30 feet when fully extended. The head was noble and fierce with horns that curved back elegantly. This was what dragons were meant to become. The surviving ravagers fled in terror from the transformed dragon. Ash stood testing the new body and released a roar that echoed across the canyon. It was a declaration and a warning. Nothing would harm them again. But the transformation had cost Amy dearly. She collapsed, drained of energy. Ash caught her gently in massive claws and lowered her to the ground. Through the bond came feelings of concern and gratitude. The dragon had taken only what was offered, never more, but it had been a lot. Amy managed a weak smile. "Worth it," she whispered. Ash curled around her protectively and Amy fell into deep healing sleep. She woke hours later to the sound of explosions. The sky above the canyon was dark with smoke. Amy struggled to her feet, supported by Ash, who had stayed watch the entire time. She looked up and her heart sank. A massive ship hung in orbit above the planet. It was like nothing Amy had seen before. Ancient and dark, built with technology far beyond current galactic capability. Weapons that looked organic rather than mechanical extended from its hull. It was firing beams of dark energy at the planet's surface, and wherever those beams touched, life simply ceased to exist. The silence had arrived. Through the bond, Amy felt Ash's recognition and fear. This was the ancient weapon system, the judge that had destroyed countless partnerships. It had detected the bond activation, the transformation, and come to test them. The question was simple. Did this human-dragon partnership deserve to exist, or would it become another threat to galactic peace? Amy looked at her scanner. The polar facility was still 50 miles north, but the silence had positioned itself between them and that destination. The council ships that had been searching for them were fleeing, their weapons useless against the ancient vessel. Commander Hayes had been right. There was nowhere to hide from this. Ash lowered a wing and Amy climbed onto the dragon's back. The bond needed no words. They both understood what had to be done. They had to reach the polar facility. The hibernation chambers there might hold answers or weapons or something that could help, but to get there, they would have to fly directly toward the silence. As Ash launched into the air, Amy felt the weight of what they represented. Every dragon-bonded pair before them had failed this test. They had chosen to use their power for conquest rather than cooperation. They had proven that such partnerships were too dangerous to exist, and the silence had judged them accordingly. But Amy and Ash were different. They had to be. Their bond was not built on desire for power. It was built on mutual rescue, on trust and companionship. Amy had offered her life to save Ash, not to gain strength, but because she loved the dragon. That had to mean something. That had to be enough. Ash flew faster than ever before, powerful wings carrying them toward the mountains. The silence's weapons tracked their movement. Dark energy beams lanced through the air, each one capable of destroying them instantly, but Ash was fast and small compared to the massive ship. The dragon dodged and weaved through the attacks with precision that only the bond made possible. Amy guided them through her human intuition, while Ash provided the physical ability to execute those maneuvers. They moved as one being, neither human nor dragon, but something new. A partnership of equals. The polar region came into view, mountains covered in ice and snow. Amy spotted structures carved into the largest peak. The ancient facility was there, waiting. The silence fired again, and this time the beam came too close. The air around them superheated, and Ash's wing was grazed. The dragon faltered but kept flying. They were going to make it. The entrance to the facility was just ahead. But Amy suddenly understood something that made her blood run cold. The silence was not trying to kill them. It was hurting them, driving them exactly where it wanted them to go, to the place where sleeping dragons lay in hibernation. If Amy and Ash failed the test there, the silence would destroy not just them, but every dragon that remained. The test had begun, and the stakes were greater than Amy had imagined. She held tight to Ash's neck as they dove toward the ancient facility. Whatever waited inside would determine the future of two species, and perhaps the entire galaxy. Amy only hoped that the choice she made would be the right one. Ash crashed through the entrance of the ancient facility, and they tumbled across ice-covered stone. Amy rolled clear and scrambled to her feet, checking the dragon for injuries. The wing was burned, but Ash could still move. Behind them, the silence hung in the sky like a dark moon, weapons charging for another strike. They had maybe minutes. The facility was enormous. Carved from the mountain itself, it stretched deep underground. Emergency lighting flickered to life as they moved deeper, responding to Ash's presence. The walls were covered in the same symbols Amy had seen in the jungle ruins. Instructions or warnings, she could not tell which. They descended through level after level until finally reaching a massive chamber. Amy stopped and stared in wonder and fear. The room was the size of an aircraft hangar. Along every wall stood cylindrical pods made of crystal and metal, each one containing a sleeping dragon. There were hundreds of them, possibly thousands. Adults of every size and color, preserved perfectly, waiting to wake. Ash moved to the center of the chamber where a raised platform stood. The same kind of platform that had activated the archives in the jungle. Amy followed, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Around them, the sleeping dragons seemed to watch through closed eyes. When Ash stepped onto the platform, the entire facility came alive. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star charts and data streams. A control system materialized, designed for claws and wings rather than human hands. Amy approached carefully and the system adjusted, creating interfaces she could use. She began to understand. This facility was not just a hibernation chamber. It was a control center. From here, all the sleeping dragons across the galaxy could be awakened simultaneously. The power to bring back an entire species at the touch of a button. The silence struck again. The mountain shook as dark energy weapons carved into stone above them. Debris fell from the ceiling. The ancient ship was coming for them, and more than that, it was coming for every sleeping dragon in this place. Amy checked the displays. The silence was charging its most powerful weapon. One shot would destroy this entire facility and everyone in it. Through the bond, Amy felt Ash's fear but also determination. They had come too far to fail now. But what could they do against something so powerful? The control system flashed and a new hologram appeared. Not an ancient dragon this time, but something else. An artificial intelligence old beyond measure. The silence itself, partnership detected, the AI said in a voice like grinding stones. Human and dragon. Bond confirmed. Testing protocol initiated. Amy stepped forward. We did not come here to fight you. All partnerships claim peace, the silence responded. All eventually choose power. This has been observed across 10,000 tests. The result is always the same. Power corrupts. Partnership becomes domination. Destruction follows. Then why test at all? Amy demanded. If you believe everyone fails, why not just destroy dragons and be done with it? Because that is not my purpose, the silence said. I was created to preserve, not destroy. To ensure that when dragons bond with other species, those partnerships are worthy. I test because I must. Because if even one partnership proves different, it justifies the existence of all others. The facility shook again. Cracks spread across the walls. The silence was still charging its weapon even as it talked. Amy realized with horror that this conversation was the test. What she said now, what she chose, would determine everything. She looked at the control panel, at the button that would wake thousands of sleeping dragons. The silence was giving her a choice. Use the power available to her, wake the dragons and fight back. Prove that when given ultimate power, humans would choose violence just like every species before them, or choose something different. Amy understood then what all the previous partnerships had failed to realize. This was not a test of strength. It was a test of wisdom. You said your purpose is to preserve, Amy said carefully. Then help me understand. If I wake the dragons, what happens? The silence's hologram shifted, showing possible futures. Amy saw dragons awakening across the galaxy, saw species rushing to bond with them, seeking power, saw wars beginning within years as partnerships competed for dominance. Saw the same cycle of destruction that had happened before, but worse because now there were more species and better weapons. And if I choose not to wake them? Amy asked, another vision. Dragons remaining in sleep for centuries more. The galaxy continuing as it was, stable but fearful. The potential for dragon partnerships lost forever, buried by fear of what might go wrong. Both futures were terrible in their own ways. Amy felt tears on her face. How could she make this choice? She was just one human who had found one dragon. How could she decide the fate of an entire species? Through the bond, Ash sent feelings of trust. Whatever Amy chose, the dragon would support. That simple faith gave her strength. There is a third option, Amy said slowly. Neither full awakening nor continued extinction. What if we prove that humans and dragons can bond responsibly before allowing more partnerships? Let us show the galaxy what this bond should be. Let us work together to rebuild what was lost, slowly and carefully. And only when other species are ready, when they have learned from our example, allow more dragons to wake. You would accept the responsibility of being the only bonded pair? The silence asked. Knowing you could have power beyond measure if you simply activated these chambers? Amy looked at Ash, her partner and friend. I did not bond with Ash for power. I bonded because Ash needed help and I could give it. That is what humanity does at our best. We help, we protect, we choose compassion even when it is harder than violence. If proving that means staying alone as the only bonded pair, then that is what we will do. The chamber fell silent. The silence's weapon charge stopped. The hologram flickered and changed, showing something Amy had not expected. Emotion. In 10,000 tests, no partnership has ever refused power when it was offered, the silence said quietly. All have tried to fight or to control. You are the first to choose responsibility over strength. The first to understand that true power lies not in what you take, but in what you protect. The shaking stopped. The cracks in the walls began to seal themselves as the facility's repair systems activated. The silence's dark ship rose higher in the sky, weapons powering down. You have passed the test, Amy Reeves and Ash. Your partnership is judged worthy. The sleeping dragons will remain in hibernation, as you suggested, but they are no longer hidden. The galaxy will know they exist, and that bonding is possible. Other species may petition for the honor, but they must prove themselves worthy as you have done. Through compassion and wisdom, not strength. The hologram faded. The silence departed, returning to wherever it had waited for 50,000 years. Amy collapsed to her knees, exhausted and shaking. Ash curled around her, providing warmth and comfort. They had done it. They had passed a test that had destroyed civilizations. Not through fighting, but through choosing wisely, through putting others before themselves. Amy accessed the control system one more time. She sent a message to the Galactic Council, to Commander Hayes, to anyone who would listen. She told them what had happened. About the test and the choice. About what dragons truly were and what bonding could mean. She offered humanity's help in establishing protocols for future partnerships, ensuring that what she and Ash had built together could be shared safely. The response came hours later. The council was in chaos, but Hayes had been promoted for his actions. He was now in charge of a new division dedicated to dragon-human relations. Advisor Nix had been removed for attempting to hide the truth. The galaxy was afraid but also curious. Change was coming. Amy and Ash remained in the facility for 3 more days, resting and healing. The bond continued to grow stronger. Amy discovered that she could live much longer now, her lifespan extended by the connection. Ash shared knowledge that the dragon species had accumulated over millions of years. They were learning to be truly partners in every sense. On the morning of the 11th day after the crash, a rescue ship arrived. But Amy did not need rescuing anymore. She walked out of the facility with Ash by her side, no longer a lost scientist, but an ambassador for a new future. They stood together on the mountain peak and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, other dragon eggs waited to be found. Other partnerships waited to form. But only when the time was right. Only when species had learned what humanity had proven, that the greatest power comes from choosing to protect rather than to dominate. Amy climbed onto Ash's back and they took flight. The dragon's wings were fully healed and stronger than ever. They flew toward the rescue ship, but Amy knew this was not an ending. It was a beginning. She had crashed on an alien world looking for scientific discoveries. Instead, she had found family. She had found purpose. She had found a truth that humanity needed to learn, that the greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the capacity to care for others, even when those others were impossibly different. 11 days ago, she had been alone and afraid. Now she flew on dragonback, bonded to a creature of legend, carrying hope for 2 species into an uncertain future. Amy smiled into the wind and through the bond felt Ash's joy matching her own. The galaxy had changed, and it had changed because one human chose compassion when she could have chosen fear, because one dragon chose trust when it could have chosen solitude. Together, they had proven that some partnerships were worth preserving, that some myths deserved to become real again. The stars waited. Adventures waited, and Amy and Ash flew toward them together. partners in the truest sense, ready to show the galaxy what friendship between species could truly mean.